Hi, this is Charlie Hesse from Tropical Birding, and welcome to this virtual bird tour of South Africa. I lived here for 9 years. My wife and son are both South African, so I've got quite a strong link to the place. In my view, it's one of the best wildlife viewing countries in the world. It's got astonishing bird life. You can see up to 500 species, including many endemics. You can rack up a list of 50 to 60 mammal species, which is pretty difficult to compete with anywhere in the world. It's amazing light, so it's really good for photography. Very wide variety of habitats that we visit and beautiful scenery. And it's got a very good tourist infrastructure as well. Really good roads and really nice lodges. Some people are a little worried about security here, but I've never spoken to anyone that hasn't felt safe here. And we always do everything we need to keep people safe. This here is the national bird of South Africa, the blue crane. Very stately bird. I'll be showing you some more pictures of it later on. Okay, here's a map of the country. It's a tour in 3 sections. The first section is around the Cape area. We have about 10 days visiting various sites there. Then we fly up to Johannesburg and we visit Drakensberg in the montane grassland and Kruger National Park down in Lowveld. And then finally we finish the tour with an extension in Kwazulu-Natal, finishing in the mountain kingdom of Lesotho and the Sani Pass. Okay, so we start the tour in Cape Town, sometimes called the Mother City, famous for Table Mountain. I spent my first year in South Africa here. You don't see this shape from every angle, but I lived in an area called Table View that had a wonderful view across. We can start the tour with an optional pelagic trip from Simonstown. It's not for everybody, it can be a little bit rough, but it's really one of the best pelagic trips in the world. Leaving Simonstown, you can start to see some Cape Gannets as you go out. And then when you get out, it's really fantastic. There's so many pelagic birds out there. You can see up to 5 species of albatrosses, including this black-browed albatross, and lots of petrels and shearwaters like Suddy shearwater and great shearwater. Okay, we're going to visit a penguin colony. There's a couple of different penguin colonies in the Cape Town area. They're wonderful birds. They're very comical, really fun to watch. They're quite sort of clumsy on land, but as soon as they get out into the water, they become very graceful, wonderful swimmers. Um, the nesting colonies here, they make nests in burrows, and when the parents come back, you can see here it's getting mobbed by its chicks. They're begging for food. Also around the penguin colony, some other birds that you can see are the African black oyster catcher here, feeding on some shellfish. Beautiful endemic birds. Okay, we're going to take a drive along to Cape Point, Cape Peninsula. There's a nature reserve there, the Cape of Good Hope Nature Reserve, and there we'll see our first mammals. Here are some eland, which are the largest antelopes in the world. We can also see the Cape Mountain zebra. It's a very rare endemic mammal. There's also some interesting reptiles out there, like this black-girdled lizard. When we get out to the point on the cliffs, you sometimes get Cape cormorants nesting. Okay, next we're going to go to the Strandfontein water treatment works, which are some of the best in the world for birds. There's thousands of flamingos there, and also get birds like pelicans and lots of ducks and shorebirds like this pied avocet. Next, we're going to go to the wonderful Kirstenbosch Botanical Gardens, which are at the base of Table Mountain. It's wonderful walking around them. They have lots of proteas in there, which are very popular with sunbirds, like this endemic orange-breasted sunbird and the beautiful malachite sunbird. You can also get this sunbird like Cape Sugarbird, which is in a different family, in a endemic family. So those family listing will want to see this one. There's a resident pair of spotted eagle owls in the botanical gardens here, and usually we just find a gardener and ask them where they're roosting at that moment. Okay, next we're going to take a day trip up the west coast to the West Coast National Park. There's a beautiful lagoon here called Langebaan Lagoon. And in the national park, there's a lot of fynbos habitat. Some of the birds we're going to be looking for are the southern black coran and the beautiful black harrier, which is really one of the most attractive raptors in the world. Another bird we can see is a bok makidi, which is named after its very distinctive vocalization. Okay, that's the end of Cape Town. We're going to set off east along the garden route and stop along the way in some fynbos habitat with a lot of rocks, looking for the Cape rock jumper. It's a really iconic endemic species, really beautiful bird. Not always easy to find, but yeah, sometimes we get really good looks. We found this one very close, and it gave us a wonderful display of preening of it sat on a rock. Okay, we're going to head into the Overberg area, which is a big area of agriculture with these big sweeping open habitats. It's all open fields. Here we look for the national bird, the blue crane. They're very elegant birds. They became very threatened, but it's a real conservation success story. BirdLife South Africa cooperated with local landowners. They're mainly found on private land. And they came up with a conservation plan, and they've really bounced back. Sometimes you're lucky enough to see them displaying and carrying on the wonderful things. It's very common to see them in fields with sheep and cows. We're also going to be looking for the large Denham's bustard. Huge birds, one of the biggest flying birds in the world, really spectacular. And there's a lot of common, colourful weavers and things as well, like this Cape weaver and southern red bishop. We're going to go down into the De Hoop Nature Reserve, where we can see this beautiful mammal, the bontebok. Bonte means pied or multicolored, and bok is antelope. They were on the edge of extinction, these, but they also they had a conservation program, which they did very well, and now they're much more common. These like this fynbos habitat as well. Another mammal that we can see here is a grey rebok. There's also some nice endemic birds like this grey-winged francolin. And De Hoop Nature Reserve is also a very important site for the Cape vulture, Cape griffin. When you get to the coast in De Hoop Nature Reserve, there's these beautiful white sand dunes, and you can look over the sort of Indian Ocean. It's just absolutely spectacular place. At the right time of year, you can also stand on the dunes and look down. You'll see these southern right whales, which are wintering there. Okay, we're going to move on to some forest further along the coast in the wilderness area. There's a town further along called Knysna, and there's actually 3 species that take their name from this town of Knysna. Knysna turco, the Knysna woodpecker, and there's also a Knysna warbler, which is a little skulker. But the wonderful forest there, we can see a lot of interesting birds, like this red-necked francolin, which comes out on the edge. There's also some nice lakes there, which are very good places to look for kingfishers, like this malachite kingfisher. Really viewing blinds that you can get quite close to these and get nice photos or videos. This is a rarer kingfisher called the half-collared kingfisher, which likes forested streams. There's lots of interesting birds inside the forest, like this buff-spotted flufftail, really difficult bird to find, but on occasion we have got lucky and found it. And also this Narina trogon, also quite a difficult bird to see. I often find them by hearing their call. It's beautiful red belly and metallic green feathers on the back. Okay, we're now going to drive up over the Swartberg Pass and down into the Karoo habitat. This is a very arid or semi-arid habitat with these little bushes. Got a lot of wonderful birds there. We're going to stay in the Karoo National Park, really scenic place and we would be right in the middle of it, staying in these chalets below beneath these mountains. Very good place for mammals. There's some really nice, well-adapted mammals to this habitat called gemsbok or southern oryx, and also springbok, which give their name to the South African rugby team. Very agile. You can also see these red hartebeest. Hartebeest get their name from these heart-shaped horns. On one trip, we saw male hartebeest really, really fighting. Got some video of it here. But yeah, they really sort of butt heads like that, go down to their knees. It was really, really quite fun to watch. They can even sort of interlock their horns and really, really wrestle. But yeah, wonderful sight. You can see they're really going for it here. A few years ago, lions were reintroduced to Karoo National Park, and just afterwards we went in there on a tour. We came across two male lions lying in the road. I sort of maneuvered the car sort of side on across the road and opened the windows, and we started taking pictures of them. And they sort of got up and started stretching, and then they started walking towards the car. We had the windows open, of course, to take photos, and they got closer and closer, just a few meters away, and we wound up the windows. I mean, when these huge predators are looking you right in the eye, I mean, it really makes you feel quite small. It's quite a feeling. And they do very nice night drives in Karoo National Park, and you can see some really fantastic nocturnal species like these aardwolves, and sometimes even aardvark. Aard means earth, and vark is pig, so it's like an earth pig. Some very nice birds in Karoo National Park as well. Largest bird in the world, the ostrich. You can see here doing its sort of courtship display, sort of flapping its wings. There's some real little hidden treasures in the Karoo habitat, like this endemic rufous-eared warbler, and this cinnamon-breasted or koppie warbler. Koppie means like a little rocky outcrop, but they like these rocky habitats. Really tough bird to see, but it's a real big prize. In other rocky areas, we can see the short-haired rock thrush. There's a few little patches of dry acacia trees here, and they've got some sort of um, dry habitat species like this Pririt batis, this fairy flycatcher. It's a good place for larks as well on these sort of open plains, and including some really rare species like this Sclatus lark. Okay, from Karoo, we drive back to Cape Town, and then we jump on a plane and fly up to Johannesburg. It's a couple of hours away. From there, we're going to drive down to Vakkerstrom, and then in the montane grasslands, and then up to Kruger National Park in the Lowveld. From Joburg, we sort of head south, and we can check some areas there for this blesbok, very closely related to the bontebok. Okay, down when we get to Vakkerstrom, it's a good place to look for meerkats. These very charming animals. They've got this habit of standing up on their hind legs. You get a sentry in the group that sort of keeps a lookout while the others are feeding. But they're really fun animals to find. Yeah, really very popular species. We sometimes do night drives from Vakkerstrom, and sometimes we come across these spring hares, which sort of hop around like a kangaroo. Sometimes we come across owls. These local marsh owls even sort of come out in winter during the day. Another bird that we're going to be looking for, the grey-crowned crane. They breed on the wetlands in the area and in winter form big flocks. Here's another real iconic bird, the secretary bird with these very long-legged raptor that sort of stalks through the long grass looking for prey. But yeah, really beautiful birds. This is another big target here called the southern bald ibis. There's several species of bustards here, like this blue bustard or blue Koran. Koran is the Afrikaans name for a small bustard. And there's also a lot of interesting lark species here. This is a spike-keeled lark, and we'll also be looking for some real rarities like Rudd's lark and Botha's lark. In some of the little rocky koppies, you can see birds like this sentinel rock thrush. And down in the wetland, we sometimes see African snipe. Okay, we've got a bit of a drive now. We're going to drive up to Kruger National Park. It's about 350 kilometers long by about 60 kilometers wide. It's the size of a small country. It's really like 200, over 200 miles long. Um, it's really one of the premier national parks in Africa. It's very spectacular. It's sort of crisscrossed by several different rivers. Um, it's a good place to see the big five. The big five were the big five dangerous animals back in the days when people went hunting these amazing animals. Here's a big male. We're just starting the car here and moving away from it. You've really got to be careful with these animals to give them space. You can sometimes see these elephants bathing as well. They're really a lot of fun to watch bathing. They sort of suck up water into their trunks and sort of spray it over themselves. They're really fascinating animals. The females form these matriarchal herds with their young and adolescent animals. Um, this was two male elephants sparring in the road, and when you come across one of these, you've just got to stop. They don't move out of the way. They do so in a when they want to. So yeah, really wonderful animals. About I think it's over 10% of the world's population of African elephants are inside Kruger. There's like sort of yeah 11 or 12,000 of these amazing beasts. Another member of the Big Five is the Cape buffalo, another um, dangerous animal that you've got to keep an eye out for. They hang around in huge herds, hundreds of, uh, of individuals. Um, Another one in the Big Five are the rhinos. There's a black and white rhino in Kruger, but you may have heard in the international news that they're really suffering from poaching for their horn. In recent years, there've been a lot of them poached. You can see this one here rolling around in the mud, but they're just really impressive animals. They're really one of my favorite animals in the world. Um, some years are especially dry. It was one year there was a real drought and all the water holes were really drying up. And we had this standoff between these African elephants, white rhino, and even a hippo. Hippos don't normally come out of the water during the day, but yeah, sometimes they have to sort of move to where there's water. But yeah, really unusual scene here. Also in the Big Five is the lion. Many lions in Kruger, and yeah, really impressive. They spend a lot of time sleeping, but occasionally get lucky and see some action, even some lion kills. And here, my favorite of all, this is the leopard, the fifth member of the Big Five. Um, it's a stunning cat, absolutely gorgeous. Um, Kruger's a very popular park. A lot of cars in there, but this can sometimes work to your advantage. If you see a big little bit of a car jam, they're often looking at something interesting like a leopard up in a tree. So with the more people out looking for these things, you've got a better chance to see them. They often spend time up in the trees, especially during the day, and they'll even pull up their prey up into the tree to keep it away from lions and this next animal. This is a spotted hyena, really one of the most successful predators and scavengers on the African continent. They've got very strong jaws, which they'll crack open bones and eat the marrow, and groups of them will even chase lions off their prey. Okay, they're the predators. These are the prey. This is the plains zebra, very photogenic animal, and then this is a giraffe. Giraffes often have these oxpeckers on them, um, looking for ticks. Sometimes they'll go anywhere they need to find them, even some pretty precarious places. There's smaller antelopes as well, like this steenbok. Yeah, with so many predators and prey, you'll often get kills and carcasses, which bring in vultures. This is the largest vulture on the right, the lappet-faced vulture, and on the left a different species, a white-headed vulture. The vultures are also having a hard time now. There's a lot of poisoning of carcasses by people. Yeah, it's a very sad story. A lot of them have become very threatened in recent years. And there's some other very nice raptors here, like this beautiful bateleur eagle. They have this very short tail and a very distinctive sort of tipping flight. And the name bateleur comes from French, which means sort of acrobat. This is another one of the largest raptors called the Martial eagle, really spectacular bird. Most of the park you have to stay in your vehicle because of the presence of dangerous animals. But on the bigger bridges over these large rivers, you can see that any dangerous animals coming. So you're allowed to get out here and scan the river. Often below the bridges, you get these huge Nile crocodiles, and it's a good place also to look for water birds like these yellow-billed storks. Also in the park, another one of the target birds is a Kori bustard, which is one of the biggest flying birds in the world. You can also get these very sinister-looking birds called the southern ground hornbill. Really spectacular, almost like the Grim Reaper. They move around in groups, family groups, looking for things to eat on the ground. Some other nice birds like the magpie shrike. We stay inside these fence camps, which keep out the dangerous animals, and inside they're wonderful places to bird. These are often quite common. This is a very tiny little owl called the African scops owl. Some other birds that we often see inside, like the yellow-billed hornbill, greater blue-eared starling, grey-headed bushrake, and in summer the woodland kingfisher. Some of the smaller birds, like chin-spot batters, and even things like brown-headed parrot. It's not all mammals and birds. Sometimes you see some very fascinating reptiles, like this flap-necked chameleon. We had this one crossing the road, and they've got this very funny way of walking. Okay, that is the end of the main trip, and then all now remains is to go on the extension down to KwaZulu-Natal. This is where I lived for 8 years down on the coast in KwaZulu-Natal, so this is a real second home for me. So we drive down from Johannesburg and then down to a park called Umkhuze. The KwaZulu-Natal parks have always been places to see the southern white rhino. This is a species that became almost extinct in the past and was brought back through effective conservation measures, but now they're being persecuted again for their horn. Sometimes the water holes are good places to see these, and they come in and bathe in they sort of have a mud bath and scratch themselves on the tree trunks. This is a very typical species seen in Umkhuze. It's called the Nyala, very beautiful antelope with these spiraling horns. This is another mammal that comes down to sort of wallow in the mud, the warthog. Even in the dry years, when it's just like a big mud path, you get the mud bath. You get these little puddles of water left, and you get mammals coming down to drink, like this slender mongoose. Many other birds come in to drink as well, like these crested guinea fowl. There's only a couple of places in South Africa where you get those, and coastal KwaZulu-Natal is one of them. Really funny little hairstyles. Also seen this real iconic hammerkop. Hammerkop is also Afrikaans, means hammerhead. See this very distinctive head shape. A lot of sunbirds you can see in Umkhuze, like this scarlet-chested sunbird, white-breasted sunbird, and a very rare and localized Neagard sunbird. We drive around Umkhuze, and the car makes a wonderful line for bird photography, so you can often get quite close to birds and get really nice photographs. This is another typical bird in Umkhuze, the red-fronted tinkerbird. There's an area of sandforest in there with some real sandforest endemic birds, like this bearded scrub robin and this really special pink-throated twin spot. Really beautiful little bird. You can do night drives in Mkuzi as well, and sometimes you can see some owl species like this southern white-faced owl, and barn owls, and several other species as well. The Mkuzi Game Reserve gets its name from the Mkuzi River. There's a story that goes, there were some Zulu warriors returning from a battle, and there was a lot of water flowing in the river. And one of the warriors warned the other ones not to cross, and they ignored his warning, and they got swept away to their death. Um, the other warrior waited till the water subsided, and then he crossed. So they called this river the Warning River, the Mkuzi River, which also gives its name to the reserve. We're going to cross over on this little bridge into the fig forest, and we go in here with a local armed park ranger, because sometimes you can get dangerous animals in there. And this is our big target in there, the Pell's fishing owl mega bird in Africa, really one of the top targets in this area. Okay, we're going to drive down to the coast to a place called St. Lucia. One of the most famous animals there is the hippo. Very big population of hippos down there in the river mouth, and you also see good place to see crocodiles. Hippos are not in the Big Five, but they kill more people in Africa every year than all the other members of the Big Five put together. They're called the second most dangerous animal in Africa after the mosquito. Very aggressive. If you come across one of these at night, it's bad. But during the day, they usually hang out in the water, hanging out in these groups, sometimes feeding on aquatic vegetation. St. Lucia, the St. Lucia Reserve, now called Isimangaliso, is a great place to see rhinos as well. In recent years, we've seen some young rhinos, which is really wonderful to see, given the predicament they're in. Another really spectacular mammal that we can see here is the kudu. On one occasion, we had two male kudu sparring with each other. They sort of interlock these spiraling horns, and they sort of lock them together and try and push each other off balance. But really impressive animals. It's one of the biggest antelopes. This park is also very good for wetland birds, like this African jacana, collared pratincoll, woolly-necked stork, and around the edge in the reed beds you can see this very localized southern brown-throated weaver and fantail widowbird. In the grasslands we can also see some typical birds like the rufous-naped lark. And there's some little forest patches as well with birds like the yellow-rumped tinkerbird, beautiful, gorgeous bushshrike, and red-capped robin-chat. Sometimes we go out for a drive at night nearby, and we look for this rare swamp nightjar. Okay, we're going to drive up into the hills. We stayed in a town called Shawi, and have a wonderful forest reserve there with a canopy platform. Sometimes we're lucky enough to see these trumpeter hornbills just at eye level. Really, really impressive birds. It's also a good place to look for this beautiful purple-crested turako and white-eared barbet. Down on the forest floor is a very secretive bird, a very rare bird called the spotted ground thrush. They're very well camouflaged, and they're very difficult to see in the leaf litter. But sometimes you can hear them tossing leaves around. Big target these. These are endangered, and one of the reasons they are is because their nests are often predated by monkeys, by vervet monkeys. It's a very interesting fact that they often survive in patches of forest that have African crowned eagles, and that's because these crowned eagles predate the monkeys, and places with lower monkey densities have better breeding success for spotted ground thrushes. So yeah. At the lodge we stay in a shawi in the garden. Sometimes we get this wonderful African wood owl. And we're going to visit another patch of forest nearby called Ungoye. And here we look for the rare green barbet. This is a bird that's found in East Africa. and then not again for thousands of kilometers until you get to this area. It's a very unusual, isolated population. We're going to drive down to the coast now to this little town of Umtunzini, and there, many years ago, somebody planted a lot of raffia palms, and these palm nut vultures like to roost and feed on the palm nuts. There's some nice mangroves down there where we look for this rare mangrove kingfisher. And there's also swamp forest where we can see the black-throated wattle-eye. Only the female has a black throat, this is a male. But yeah, really beautiful bird. Also in these forests we can see the violet-backed starling. Okay, next we're going to drive up towards the Drakensberg Mountains. Drakensberg means dragon, and Berg means mountain. It's Dragon Mountains. And below there's some very nice grasslands where we can look for this extremely rare wattled crane. It's going to be the third species of crane for the trip. In summer, we can also see these long-tailed widow birds, which do this spectacular flight display. There's also a few nice forest patches where we can see rare birds like this orange ground thrush or bush blackcap. Okay, we're going to drive up towards Sunny Pass and the kingdom of Lesotho. On the way, there's some patches of proteas, and here we look for the Guernsey sugarbird. You can see this very sort of rocky road that goes up. Spectacular birding road. There's so many good birds along here. In the rocky areas, we can see some typical birds like buff streaked chat, ground woodpecker, and this big target, the Drakensberg rock jumper. Quite similar looking to the Cape rock jumper, but it's kind of like a paler orange belly. Yeah, really beautiful bird. We can see Cape rock hyraxes, or dassies as they're called in South Africa. And we get to the border post of at Sunny Pass, and we can cross over into the kingdom of Lesotho and get a stamp in our passport. Here we find the second bird that has Drakensberg in the name. This is a Drakensberg siskin. Up here you get the Sunny Mountain Lodge, which prides itself as being the highest pub in Africa. And from here we can look down the road that we've just driven up down into South Africa. Really spectacular scenery and a wonderful way to finish the trip. Okay, that's it. We're going to drive down to Durban, and that's where we fly out. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's really one of my favorite trips, and yeah, a really fantastic place to visit. So I hope you'll enjoy a real tour, not a virtual tour there in the future.